Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Small Business Show. I'm your host, Swire Ho, the promo guy. Today, I have Mike Acker. He's the president of Advance, a coaching and consulting company. Mike is a keynote speaker, author, executive, and communication coach with over 20 years of speaking experience. I'm excited to have Mike to be on the show today, especially I want to ask him more about how to speak confidently in a virtual setting. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, doing great, Swire. Looking forward to diving in. Every single day, I start my day thinking, how can I help people? So, as the audience is tuning in today, that's my goal to help you really achieve that confidence, that success that you're looking for.
Sure, Mike. Before we start, would you mind to let us know a little bit more about what you do, and maybe touch on a little bit of your background from coaching and consulting?
Absolutely. So, I've been doing coaching since I was in debate team in university. So, what we would do we would coach other people. We would coach each other. And then when I became a senior, I was coaching the freshmen, the sophomores on the debate team. And then afterwards, I went into the whole world of speaking and I was constantly coaching people. I've done sports coaching. So I've always had this coaching edge to me. Even as a teenager, I coached younger kids in sports. So I always had this coaching edge and always a speaking edge ever since I got into debate team while I was in college. So those two have gone hand in hand. Sometimes I've coached people who are in the organizations I've led, and I've led several. Sometimes I was coaching people who were actually my bosses, and they knew I was a speaker. And so I would now in a sales role, and they'd ask me questions, and I'd give them feedback. So there's always been these type of coaching. Now, a couple of years ago, I started coaching on the side, just as kind of a side hustle, as a side hobby. It's actually just something I was doing for fun. And then during that time, I met someone who was asking me some questions, and she had written a book. So I put a lot of my thoughts onto book. And then from then the coaching business has started up and up and up and up. So I coach professional level athletes, actually flying out after this call to go work with incredible Stipe Miocic from UFC heavyweight championship. And so all kinds of athletes, some celebrities, some politicians, CEOs, ultimately to help them get their point across.
Okay. One of the point that you put on to our show notes is, where you are is not where you have to be. So that's a really interesting concept. I kind of stuck on that for a little bit. What does it mean? Like, you mind to elaborate a little bit more on how, that will set us, I think, the right mindset for where we want to be.
Right. There's a great quote that says, whether you think you can or cannot, you're right. If you think that you can't grow your business, if you think that you can't put yourself out there, if you think you're not worthy of people's attention, if you think you can't charge a certain amount, you are right. But if you think you can overcome being victimized, if you think you can overcome this obstacle, this weakness, then you are also right. So this whole saying of where you are is not where you have to be means this. If you're a spot where you're stuck, you don't have to be stuck. If you're a spot where your skills are poor and have always been poor, you don't have to. If you speak with fear, like a lot of my clients speak with nervously, and it stresses you out, you don't have to be there. So you can make the choices to get from wherever you are to where you want to be. And so a lot of improvement starts with belief. You got to believe you can. You got to believe you can get better. You can't even get into the technical skills until you believe that you can actually and use these skills to get you where you want to go. So that's the heart of it. It's like a motivational thing that's saying, come on, you can do this if you believe you can.
But sometimes it's scary, right? You're very comfortable with where you are, for example, with your job, or if you are athletes, where you are currently. So how would you suggest people to go with that first step? Because the first step, I think, is the most difficult. Once you get into a groove or a pattern, then it's easier, right? You can set up in a routine, for athletes. So how would you encourage people to take the first step?
Yeah. Take a moment and write down where you want to be. Years ago, I was flying on a plane and I was coming back from a business trip. And I just thought, I don't think this is what I want to be doing. I don't think this is exactly what I want to be doing in my life. And so on the phone, I just pulled up in a note and started writing down where I want to be physically, where I want to be relationally, where I want to be in work and finances, and just painting a picture. And then I came back, and afterwards I revisited it and thought through a little bit more. And some of them, I don't really need to do that. But others were like, yeah, that's where I want to be. So first of all, identify where you are and find out where you are. If you're going to go somewhere, you need to start at the starting point. If you're going to pull up a maps, you can't just say, chart my course to New York. It's going to say, where are you coming from? Oh, I'm coming from Seattle. Okay. So where is your starting point? And what do you want your destination to be? So if you're stuck, or if you don't even know if you're stuck, write down where you are and write out ideas of where you want to be, and then come back to it 24 hours later, come back to it a week later, and look at which ones are still there. So it wasn't just in the moment you were interested.
Okay. And you mentioned that more than a few times. It's all about you, as a person, So I want to ask you, you to be you, and especially I think, we're watching the Olympics right now. Yeah, I'm really surprised and always humble about, people to be at the top of the world. How much struggle and how much sacrifices they have to do. They have to wake up and go to the swimming pool 2 times a day. 5 a.m. in the morning, go to school, and then go back and swim again. So, how does it mean by you to be you?
Right. So this was one of the big strategies that has just surfaced from my book, Speak with No Fear. And in that one, I talk about how to overcome your fear of speaking, but really the strategy is not just relevant there, it's relevant everywhere. And the idea is this, that often we have an idea of who we should be. I want to be like that. I want to be that person over there. I mean, going to the Olympians, it's not going to work well if a 5-foot gymnast wants to be a basketball player. It's just not going to work well. They got to stay with what they're good at and what their body's built for. Likewise, it's not going to be good for someone who's 7'5" to want to be a gymnast. The body type's not just the right one for it. So lean into what you're good at and claim a hold of that. Accept who you are, your natural aspects of who you are, appreciate who you are, and then improve the areas that you are not good at, that you can improve on. Don't try to be a poor imitation of someone else. Be the best version of yourself. When it comes to public speaking, often we have someone who says, I've had this happen to me. A professional came and said, I want to work with you. She hired me and she said, I want to be like everyone else. They're all calm, cool, and collected. And I said, well, what are you naturally like? And she said, I'm gregarious, I'm outgoing. I said, you're going to be miserable trying to fit into a mold that wasn't made for you. Instead of you trying to become like them and all the stress that puts on you, instead, let's help you be a really good version of you and get your message across that way. So you be you is learning you, understanding you, studying you, taking responsibility for you, improving you, but ultimately it's you and not someone else.
Yeah, I think it took me, wow, over 15 years to actually found out what you just said. We try to compare ourselves to other great speaker out there. There's a lot of them, and sometimes it's scary. Some people are naturally charismatic. They have a good voice, right? They're very punctual, and if you listen and compare yourself to the commentator on TV, you get depressed, right? You might never be as good as they are. But for me, for example, it's my second language, right? English. And it took me a while to find where my pattern will be. If you have me read off on the screen, that's the end of it. Right. But then if you help me have a conversation, like kind of like what we are doing right now, I'm able to have a long, long conversation. So I guess, you're right. You got to find where you're good at. Not necessarily mean that you don't have to work on your skills, but knowing where to start, I think it's and where you want it to be, is a lot easier than it just go out there and trying to do something.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And it's so easy to compete and to compare. And so I live by this little maxim. It's in my book as well. Compare and compete, you'll live in defeat. If you're looking out there and saying, how am I measuring up to them? There's always going to be someone doing better, and it's going to make you feel bad. And there's always going to be someone who's doing worse, and it's going to make you feel prideful. So it leads to pity or pride when you compare. And if you compete, and now natural competitive is really good, but if you're trying to compete in the sense of like, I gotta be better in this area and sometimes you're going to run across somebody who is just top of the game. I'm not trying to compete against Tony Robbins. You know what? Instead of trying to compete against somebody else, I really want to compete against myself. And I know that this rubs something a little bit wrong because some people are just naturally competitive. They're like, I'm going to go get it. But you know what? When it comes to personal improvement, it's for yourself and it's not for them. You compete to win an award. Personal improvement is not about winning an award. It's about really the best version of yourself. And so, I mean, just like family dynamics, you don't compete with other families. You really just compete with yourself to make yourself better in the family.
Yeah, speaking of communication, I'm sure that since March of 2020, we're experiencing a new line of communication, virtual communication. Before when you practice on your presentation, it will be in person. You keep your steps, you keep your hand movement. But now it's a totally different thing. So you instead of speaking to an audience, you're speaking like we are right now to our monitor, to our camera, and then we have to worry about microphone and different kind of setup. What's your conversation been like with your clients? Are they shifting more and emphasizing more to virtual communications?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was coaching virtually before the pandemic hit. So this was something that was actually in my favor. When the pandemic hit, I was already there. I was already ready. And I already knew Zoom. One of the great things is before I used to have to tell people how to use Zoom. And now everybody knows how to use it because they're using it for workplace. And I had one guy before pandemic, he hired me and I introduced him to Zoom. So he bought some stock. He goes, this is really interesting. So he bought a bunch of stock.
Oh, nice.
And then the pandemic hit. I was like, why didn't you think about to tell me? But here's what has happened in the pandemic is, and actually this is coming up in a book that's coming out this September. So I've already written it. We're just going through the drafting and the editing right now. And the whole idea is speak online and in virtual meetings. And here's what happens. Before the pandemic and pretty much the history of computers were a solo mode and meetings were a social mode. So there's two different modes that you operate in. So you go in social mode, and it's like, hey, how's it going? Even the most introverted person comes in and knows that in the social setting, they have to put their shoulders back and I got to look at people in the eye and maybe I don't like to, but I got to shake people's hands. And I have to make some small chat. So it's social mode. Now, even the most extroverted person knows that when you're working on an Excel spreadsheet, you kind of hunker down and maybe you try to keep your posture straight, but often it falls. You look down, your eyes are down, your energy is ebbing. It's not flowing into you. It's ebbing away from you. So two different modes. Now, the pandemic really brought these two together, where now social mode is meeting solo mode. But do you know which one's winning? Solo mode. So this is why you see a lot of people with lackluster energy in a presentation. And they'll literally go into it. I've audited a whole bunch. And they'll go, okay, so so this is what we're going to be doing. Yeah, we're going to, okay, hold on a second. Let me pull this up. Right. Okay, so, and well, what is that? That's total solo mode. If that same person was at a conference table, they would never look like that. They would never talk like that. Most likely wouldn't. Most people wouldn't. They'd realize that they are performing, but people aren't performing. They're just going through the motions. And so here's what's happened is that now we have a crutch. We have something that we don't have to take as serious. Before, as you said, people get in place, get dressed up. And okay, I'm presenting and I'm stressed out, but I'm presenting. And I talk a lot about overcoming the fear and speaking with confidence, but they're doing it. Now they're just calling it in. They got their whatever on, they're here and it's not coming across. So one of the first things about virtual communication, if you want to be good at it, is to act like you're talking to a real person in a real environment. That means looking them in the eye. And so the eye of virtual communication is the camera when I'm talking and the screen when I'm listening. So I'm talking to the camera straight at eye level, by the way. So I'm not up here and I'm not down here. My head's not just right here. Look how Swire's right in the middle of the screen right there. Look how I'm on the top third right there. And so you're meeting them and looking them in the eye. This is a face-to-face conversation. And even lean in a little bit, not overly so like awkward, but lean in a little bit where your shoulders are a little bit inwards because it shows intent, and then use that energy. Now, I talk about this in my book. And so the illustration I use in the book coming up in September, By the way, follow me on LinkedIn so you can find out that later on, or connect with me so I can make sure you get that. But here's what happens when I take my son to a restaurant. He's 6 years old now. And I used to have to go into the bathroom with him and change his diapers and everything when he's a little baby. But now he goes into the bathroom alone, and I stand outside the door. Now, the door of the bathroom at a restaurant is both an obstacle and opportunity. It's an opportunity because now I don't have to change his diaper. And pretty soon, as I keep on working through this opportunity, I can sit at the table and he can go on himself. But you know what? It's also an obstacle, because before I used to be in the bathroom with him saying, okay, make sure you pull up your underwear, make sure you wipe, make sure you do the things you need to do. But now it's an obstacle because I still need to coach him as a dad. I still need to remind him of different things and, not to put his hands on the ground, whatever, right? I still need to remind him, but now I'm talking through something. So what do? I don't do it, hey, buddy, just make sure everything's going well in there. No, what do? I actually put my head against the door so he can hear me. And I talk loud and I enthuse more. And I put energy into it. Hey, buddy, how are you doing in there? Everything good? Okay, just make sure you wash your hands. And to stay connected, it takes more energy and more intentionality. This right here, the camera, is both an obstacle and an opportunity. It's an opportunity because right now, Swire and I can connect, even though we don't live anywhere close to each other. That's a great opportunity. It's also an obstacle because we could easily go into solo mode and drop the energy and feel less connected. Yeah, well, things are going well instead of connected. So a huge part of this is talk through the door by exerting more energy and targeted effort and intentionality. Then you turn the obstacle into an opportunity. And as you'll find out in the book, there's actually so many more benefits that come from doing this way. But those are a few. And a starting point is more energy, like it's person, look in the eye, shoulders up, head over shoulders.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have had another conversation with a trade show professional. They said that local trade show normally have a few hundred people to attend. So last year they couldn't do that in person, so they decided to put it on a virtual platform. They actually have more than 2,000 people attend because there are information people actually wanted to get and learn to do, and they're not willing to make the plane over. But now it's online, virtually. There are actually people who wanted to get your content. There might be people. I'm sure that Mike, you have talked to people that outside of the U.S. Normally you wouldn't fly over there just to talk to them, but virtually you can hop on, find the right time zone, have your meeting. It could be an engaging, not as good as in person, but then it's a lot better. Now you're seeing that person face to face. You can hear their, see their body language a little bit. So I think, like you said, this obstacle is also a big opportunity. Now, instead of presenting with your client 2 different times with 2 different departments, get them all in the same meeting. Any question that you might have, I will happy to answer it. And then I think one of the good things is you're by your computer where you have all your files. I'm sure that you've seen people when they present, they couldn't find a file or they couldn't connect with the Wi-Fi and then the whole thing fell apart. But then you are at your computer. Everything is in there for you. So I think like the analogy, opportunity and also an obstacle at the same time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I did a presentation for Adobe, and then I did a presentation for Adobe India. And I did it here in my virtual studio. So I actually have multiple cameras and I have a whole area over here. And because I leaned into the opportunity of it, I did a presentation at 10:30 p.m., which was like 9 a.m. Adobe India time. And they were right there by the computer so they could take notes on it. They could write that there. They were leaning in. All the cameras were on. And it actually, not only would I not have flown out to India to do this normally, also, it was incredible because I was able to do all these kind of different backgrounds and keep their interest and do breakout rooms. And they loved it. They said that's better than in person. So sometimes it can't match in-person quality because you want the room. But for a workshop, man, it is incredible. It is incredible and incredible benefits that come from it. So just make sure that you're availing yourself of the opportunity by treating it with even more energy than in-person event or in-person meeting.
Yeah, I wanted to get your input because, you touch on it perfectly. You talk about speaking with confidence. And I want to ask you a question. How do you speak with confidence virtually? Because I've had been to in-person events with some great speaker, in person. But then virtually, like the example that you had, they might be typing or maybe the camera didn't work or lighting or whatever it is. The experience for me was different. There were less engaging than they were in person. Are there such a ways that you can encourage and coach us to speak better and more confidently virtually?
Absolutely. So ultimately, speaking with confidence comes from three sources. And two of these are going to be relevant in whether it's in person or if it's virtually. This is actually another book that is in the pipeline right now. And this one is identity and messaging. So those are relevant whether you're on stage or on screen. The third one is skills. And the skills, that becomes particular to virtual settings and particular to in-person. So speaking with confidence comes from identity, messaging, and skills. Identity and messaging, always relevant. Skills, let's just talk about virtual skills. One of the things in virtual skills is to make sure that your setup is good. So actually, ideally, you want to be observing the rule of thirds, meaning this, that if you were to think about a photo, this is a photography principle, that you take this screen and make this as a photograph, that you divide this into vertical thirds and then horizontal thirds. And so typically, if you're taking a picture of the Eiffel Tower, for example, the normal thing is that they would put the peak right here and the Eiffel Tower would be right here. That photo is never going to win. Instead, what you should do is put it on the top horizontal third and the first vertical third. Okay, how does that pertain to cinematography? How does it pertain to video? That you actually want your eyes on the top third. So if you look at this and just split this screen up, my eyes are right at the first horizontal third. Now, what does that do? Is it frames me better so that there's a gap between my head and the top, or your head and top, or if I'm coaching closer to you, it'd be a little bit like this right here. But my eyes are 1/3, and you're going to see enough of my body that you're going to read my posture. So if we're sitting at Starbucks together talking, this is about the amount of my body that you'd be able to see. So basically, you want to be able to see the bottom of your rib cage all the way to a little bit above your head, because there's a lot that's conveyed in all of this. And so that's one skill that's going to make you more confident. If you know you look good, you're going to feel good. We all know this in dresses. You like dressing and you get dressed up, you go, oh man, I look good. Oh man, I feel good. Well, look good virtually. Personally, set yourself up with a rule of thirds, set yourself up with a good camera, good quality. Further down on my LinkedIn, I have a whole PDF that I downloaded, maybe I uploaded, but maybe 3 months ago, just different equipment that people could buy so that you can invest in it. Think about it like this, that the camera that I have is a $200 camera that I'm using right now. And I use it all the time. If you're going to go out for a job and a brand new job, and you could wear sweats in your previous job, but now you need to wear a suit. Your suit is an investment in your job. So think of the camera as a new suit. It helps you look good. So invest in how you look. It's a skill that you need virtually. Invest in your backdrop. And everything here is intentional. So my wife and I, a picture of us in our engagement, a little thing of dad, my books, my dad's book, some natural wood right here, picture of my wife and I over here, a plant down below. And all of this is strategic, just like Swires. He's thought through the background behind him. So if you're in a virtual setting, don't just go onto the bed. Don't create something. Don't just go for the blurred background. Don't just go for the virtual background. Think through, if you're going to do this enough, think through what's behind you. So put something of visual interest that's not too distracting, so that you're not like, what is that? Not too distracting, but that's going to convey a little bit of who you are. And then put your lights behind it. Because if all of a sudden, if I say, Alexa, turn off lights, Alexa, turn off office. So all of a sudden now my light got darker. And now you can't see my facial expressions as much. So Alexa, turn on office lights. Now you're going to be able to see my face better. And so this is all an investment on my part to be able to skillfully communicate. Once again, If you know you look good, you feel better about yourself. So those are some virtual skills. Second part, going back to the whole energy, is don't go half baked. Don't just pull up your notes, and because you can, don't just pull up your notes, cover this, and be like, yeah, so this is what I'm doing. Da, 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 da. Don't lose the energy. Skillfully put more energy into it. If you are going to use your notes, at least put it onto the main page. So drag that over here, and so you're looking under the camera. But even then, think about what would you do if it was a real setting, and do that and then some. So think about your visuals, think about the mode of presentation, and then think about the sound. So the sound you're making now, the sound's coming from a couple of sources. It's going to come from here. You want to skillfully be talking here. Remember, solo mode, you drop energy. So what does that mean? You typically mumble. Yeah, I'm just working on the computer right now. I'm just doing this right here, and that's on here. So people start presenting and they mumble. So think about the sound. So you thought about the visuals, you thought about the energy. Now think about the sound. You want to make sure you're enunciating, clearly getting the thoughts out there so that your message is fully understood. But not only the sound that's coming from you, the sound that is getting picked up. So I have a Yeti Blue mic right here. I actually have like 5 different microphones, and this is the one I'm using. This is a $290 one, but I have other ones I started with as well. And you want to get one that's not just you talking to your laptop most of the time. If you're doing this a lot, my microphone, I use this for hearing swire, but I'm not using this for picking up my sound because the quality will drop. So think about a couple different things. Think about visuals, how you look. Think about your energy, what you're doing, and not just doing it half-baked and just calling it in. And think about the sound. With that, you will speak more confident because you look good, you sound good, and you're prepared well.
Yeah, I love that. Not to mention too, if you're a small business, these are cheaper compared to when you walk into a big presentation. Think about, a couple here, 100 here, a couple hundred there. When we used to need to impress a big client, you might need a corner office that overlook the mountains. How much rent are you going to be paying? You can get a Zoom account, invest in the background. Let's assume that you get the nicest equipment, $1,000. There's only $1,000 you spend once, and then you can impress a lot of people anywhere in the world. You don't need to. People, even big business now, Google might not have some of their bigger offices in Silicon Valley. They might have all the employees working virtually. How would that? I think there's a different mentality that I wanted to encourage the listener to think about. You might. Right? You have to buy your suits, or you might have to buy a nice purse, to go into a nice presentation. But then with a background, with the mic, with the lighting, you have to invest once, and that will be it. And I also want to mention, Mike, you're standing up right now, right? While we're having conversation, you actually get more energy. And I'm debating because I sway a lot. So sometimes I stand, sometimes I sit. But then if you're standing up, doing your presentation, naturally you get more energy that way. I think that's no brainer. If you're doing a presentation, that will bring you the energy. You don't slouch onto your chair like Mike said. Think about doing that sometime.
Yeah, and absolutely. So there is the PDF on my LinkedIn that has a whole bunch of just different things that you can do, and it has different options of mics and stands, and I can quickly walk you through some of the things I have in this office right here. So I have several different mics, but the one I'm using is a Blue Yeti. This is a standing desk that's not super tall. It's not super wide, and it's actually extremely affordable. It's like $250, but I can easily go up and down and control that. I have several different like boom stands. So like here's a boom stand right here that goes on here and it holds all my video switcher, which that's about $1,000 worth of stuff over there. But most people don't need that kind of stuff. More than that. And then I have another camera right here. So I have multiple cameras, and then that can provide more interest if you're showing different things. I have different screens to manage what I do. Most people might not need that. And then I have some lights, and I have about 8 different lights here. You can buy some of these different lights, and these are on that PDF as well for as low as $50. And it really helps you have a good light on your face. And so really invest in it and I mean, if this is going to be for a while, and if you do this every single day, then you might as well have something that makes you look good. Like
Mhm.
if you're going to have to wear the same uniform every single day, might as well get a couple of those uniforms and get some high quality one so that you're comfortable and you look good versus just shoddy.
Yeah. Plus, I want to mention something that most people don't think of too, because if you normally do your presentation in person, you only get one shot, right? But then if you do it virtually, you could record yourself and judge on yourself as many times as you like. With Zoom, you could record yourself day in, day out, and then work with Mike, and he could really see you and criticize you, and you can actually improve your presentation tremendously until you feel like you're 100% or close to 100%. Then you do your presentation. So you actually have that opportunity available to you where normally we couldn't. Not, like we don't even see the place that we're presenting. We don't have no control of a mic, of our lighting, until we actually get there. So these are actually advantages. And I think as a small business owner, the level to entry that we look better than our bigger competitor is so much easier. With all the strategy that Mike just provided, you can look better, if not way better, your competitor. Not to tell you, after a year, people still pretend they're like a terrorist. They're like behind the back. You don't see their face. They're like they're in a cave. So think about that. How
Yeah,
would that having a better presentation, if knowing that your ideal client is considering a couple of company, how would you score better? If you look better, you present better, they can hear you better. Sometimes,
right.
I go to a presentation, they're using their computer mic. I couldn't really hear them, really want to go there for the information, but then the presentation do turn me off, and not going to tell you, how easy people to hit, uh, close the browser, and that's it. That's the presentation. So,
Yeah,
you got to keep this in mind, like Mike said, it's an opportunity, it's an obstacle.
yeah.
Which way you go, it's depend on you.
Yeah, it really is. And I just go back to this again and again. I mean, if it's the classic thing, like if you're gonna go out there, how do you and cut down some if you got an axe and you're gonna cut down some trees, sharpen the saw, right? Sharpen the axe first. And just a easy way to sharpen your skill is just by spending some time. I mean, these are wood. I put this up myself, so this is not a virtual background. This is a real stuff, and I put that there. I chose the books, I got my records and everything, and it's been a little bit fun to do, but it's a space I own. We also chose the house that we bought. We bought this during the pandemic so that I could have a space to do it. So this is one of the spare bedrooms in the house. So we just put a lot of intentionality, and yeah, there's some money in it. But as a small business owner, I can actually discount this space here as part of my taxes and so that's a win too. And these are all things that you can discount as well as then becomes useful elsewise as well. So I just highly encourage you to really invest in your setup.
Great. I know that we can go on forever, but I think if listener have more question about the setup, how to speak more confidently, and also want to get better in virtual communication, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for asking that. You can find me at mikeacker.com. I know we're on LinkedIn as well. And so you can reach out to me and message me on LinkedIn. You go on to mikeacker.com though and click on coaching. You'll see that there's executive coaching and then there's communication coaching. And so either of those, you can set up a discovery call, and I have programs that I run, and there's all kinds of different ways that I'm able to help people. So look me up, find me at mikeacker.com, contact me on LinkedIn, and we can find a way to really help you succeed in your communication.
Thank you so much for coming on today, Mike. Definitely, go check out Mike's book when it come out in September, right?
Yep. Yeah. I have 5 books right now, but there's a couple books coming out, and one is on speaking virtually. So follow me and follow me on Amazon so you get those alerts.
Great. Thank you so much for coming on today, Mike.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.